She thought kindness would cost her only $8, just a simple meal for a hungry stranger in a worn biker jacket, nothing more. But by the next morning, the sound of 100 roaring engines echoed down her quiet street. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. The woman who once struggled to buy lunch now stood frozen on her porch. As an army of leather-clad riders stopped in front of her home, what could make a gang like the Hells Angels come back for her? What happened that night would change everything, and prove that even the smallest act of kindness can ignite the loudest revolution. It was a grey Sunday morning on the south side of Atlanta, the kind where the air feels heavy, and hope costs more than a meal. Keisha Williams, a 27-year-old single mother, counted the last few bills in her worn wallet before catching the early bus to her shift at a diner. $8. That's all she had left until payday. But she smiled anyway. She always did. Her world was small but honest. Long hours, quiet prayers, and the dream of giving her little boy a better life. To most people, she was invisible, just another black woman working too hard for too little. But that morning, as she walked past the gas station, she saw something that made her stop. A man, rough, tattooed, wearing a torn biker vest, sat slumped against the wall, shivering in the cold. People passed him like he was part of the sidewalk. Keisha hesitated. Her son's dinner depended on those $8. But something in her heart whispered louder than logic. She took a step closer, unaware that this single act of compassion would ripple far beyond her quiet life, and bring the world to her doorstep. The diner was quiet that afternoon, just the hum of the coffee machine and the hiss of the grill. Keisha wiped the counter, half distracted, when she saw the same biker from the morning sitting in one of the booths. His vest still said Hells Angels. His hands were rough and bruised, but his eyes looked softer now. He ordered nothing. Just sat there, nodding at her like he understood something she didn't. When she finally walked over, he slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten note. "You saved a life today." And that was it. No money. No explanation. By evening, word had spread. A black woman had served one of them. The whispers began before she even clocked out. The white manager asked her to come into the office. He smiled that fake corporate smile. "We've had some complaints. Maybe you should take a few days off," he said. She tried to ask why, but his eyes told her it wasn't really about her performance. Outside, 2 customers she'd served earlier were waiting near the parking lot. They laughed under their breath. "Guess you found yourself a new gang, huh?" one said. The other muttered something she couldn't repeat. Her hands trembled as she hurried to the bus stop. That night, she tucked her son into bed and tried to ignore the way her phone buzzed. Unknown numbers. Messages calling her names she hadn't heard since high school. Traitor. You people never learn. You think helping one of them makes you better. By morning, someone had spray-painted her front door, "Race Traitor." Keisha stood there in silence, her son peeking from behind her legs. She didn't cry, she couldn't. She just picked up a sponge and started scrubbing, her neighbors watching but not helping. That's the part that hurt most, not the hate, but the silence that followed it. 3 days later, she returned to work. The manager didn't even look at her. Her shifts were cut. The regulars avoided her. And that night, when she took the bus home, she noticed the same biker parked near her street, helmet off, watching from a distance. For a second, fear spiked. Was this a warning? A setup? But then she saw what was behind him. A row of motorcycles lined up, headlights glowing in the dark, engines rumbling low like thunder about to break. Something was coming. And this time, the whole neighborhood would hear it. Engines roared like thunder outside her window, a sound so deep it rattled the glass. Keisha rushed to the door, clutching her son's hand. The morning sun hit chrome and leather, a line of motorcycles stretching down the block. Neighbors stepped out, eyes wide. Some recorded, others whispered. The same biker she'd helped stepped forward. His name, she learned later, was Reed. He looked nothing like the monster people had painted him to be. He took off his helmet, revealing a face weathered by years of hard living, and tears in his eyes behind him. Dozens of Hell's Angels dismounted, each carrying something in their hands: boxes, groceries, envelopes, toys. One by one, they placed them at her porch. The same community that had mocked her yesterday now watched in silence as the men everyone feared kneeled before her home. And then came the words that froze everyone in place. Reed spoke, his voice trembling. "That day, you gave me food when nobody else would. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I was ready to give up, until you showed me kindness." He turned to the crowd, The same neighbors who had judged her. You called her a traitor, but she's the only one who acted human. Keisha couldn't move. Her son clung to her leg, his small eyes watching the bikers leave gifts they didn't have to give. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. And then, the police arrived. The officers stepped out, hands on their belts, uncertain. For a moment, the tension thickened again. Would they see a mob, or a miracle? Reed met their gaze calmly, then walked up to Keisha's door and placed a white envelope on her steps. From all of us, he said. When she opened it, she froze. Inside was a check, enough to change her life forever. The engines roared once more as they left, leaving behind a silence that felt holy. For the first time in her life, the world had turned its head toward kindness and couldn't look away. The next morning, the graffiti on Keisha's door was gone, washed clean not by her hands, but by her neighbors. The same people who had once stared in silence now stood beside her, ashamed yet awakened. News vans lined the street. The photo of a black woman surrounded by 100 bikers had gone viral overnight, a moment of raw humanity cutting through the noise of hate. Keisha didn't ask for fame. She just wanted peace. But her story traveled, from TV screens to classrooms, from church sermons to dinner tables. People debated, cried, and reflected. Some saw it as a miracle, others as a mirror, showing who we choose to be when kindness crosses color lines. The diner called her back, offering an apology and her job. She didn't return. Instead, she started a community kitchen in the same neighborhood that once turned its back. On the front door hung a simple sign, "Kindness has no color." And Reed. He came back every Sunday, parking his bike out front, helping serve meals beside her. Two people who should have never met, one seen as an outlaw, the other overlooked, became a symbol of what America could be if heart spoke louder than hate. But behind the hope, a question still lingers. Why did it take a miracle for people to see her worth? Why must a black woman's kindness make headlines before it's believed? Because the truth is, racism doesn't always wear a badge or raise a fist. Sometimes, it just looks away, so maybe the real change begins when we stop turning away and start seeing each other, because one $8 act of kindness shouldn't have changed the world. But maybe, just maybe, it's the kind of story that finally can.